Have you ever saved someone's child on an operating table at 6 in the morning, then sat at your own mother's kitchen table that same night and been told you've never done anything meaningful with your life? I have. By the night of that gala, I'd repaired 43 pediatric hearts. Not once did my family know about any of them. My younger sister Brecken didn't know. What she'd told every donor, every family member, every person who'd listen, was that she built the program I'd been running for over a decade. She's standing on my shoulders, and she's never once looked down. But here's what Brecken didn't know when she printed those gala programs with her name on every page. The North Carolina Medical Association had already chosen me, Physician of the Decade. And the ceremony? The exact same night, the exact same ballroom, the exact same fundraiser she was chairing. If you've ever built something with your bare hands and watched someone else sign their name to it, hit that subscribe button right now, because what happened at that gala made 260 people go completely silent. Like the button too, because you're going to want to come back to this one. I've got a feeling some of you already know where this is going, but I promise you, you don't. Not yet. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from tonight. I want to know who's here with me. Now let me take you back to the winter of 2013, the night I drove to Raleigh with everything I owned in a rented U-Haul and a job offer I hadn't told a single family member about. I grew up in Kernersville, about 90 minutes west of Raleigh. Small town, tobacco country, the kind of place where your neighbors know your business before you do. My parents, Gerald and Peg Vaughn, ran a hardware store on Main Street for 31 years. Decent people, honest, the kind who believed that hard work spoke for itself and that talking about your accomplishments was the same as bragging. Brecken was born when I was 6, and I loved her immediately. I mean that. She was this tiny, loud, perfect thing, and I remember carrying her around the house like she was mine. I fed her bottles, I read to her. When she was 3 and I was 9, she told our neighbor, Mrs. Calloway, that I was her other mama, and everyone laughed. But somewhere around middle school, maybe earlier, I'm not sure, the script started shifting. Brecken was social. Brecken was charming. Brecken had this way of walking into a room and making every single person feel like they were the only one in it. I was quieter. I studied. I spent weekends at the library or shadowing Dr. Fenton at the family clinic because I wanted to be a surgeon by the time I was 14. My parents didn't discourage me, but they didn't celebrate it either. When I got into Duke on a full scholarship, my dad said, "Well, that's something." When Brecken got homecoming queen that same fall, they threw a party, invited the neighbors, hung a banner on the porch. I remember standing in the driveway watching my mom take photos and thinking, I got into Duke. The word party was never mentioned. I told myself it didn't matter, and maybe it didn't, but it settled into my bones in a way I didn't fully understand until much later. There's a difference between being loved and being seen. My parents loved me. They just didn't see me. And after a while, you stop expecting to be seen, and you stop trying. That Easter dinner I mentioned, Brecken's exact words, I'll get to that. But first you need to understand what I walked into that night, and what I'd already been swallowing for years. Medical school was brutal, and I loved every second of it. I won't bore you with the details, the residency years, the fellowship, the sleepless rotations. What matters is that by 2013, I had a job offer from Trident Children's Hospital in Raleigh to start a congenital heart program. The hospital had been trying to recruit someone for 2 years. They couldn't find a surgeon willing to build from scratch in a mid-size market. I said yes in 11 minutes. I called my mom to tell her. She said, "Oh, that's nice, honey. Hey, have you talked to Brecken this week?" She's been stressed about the wedding. Brecken was marrying Collier Eastwick, old Raleigh money. His family had been on the hospital board at Trident for 3 generations. His mother, Nan Eastwick, chaired their annual gala. I didn't think much about it at the time. Raleigh's a big enough city. I figured our worlds wouldn't overlap. I was wrong about that. The first 2 years, I barely left the hospital. I'm talking 16-hour days, 6 days a week. I built the congenital heart program from nothing. Recruited 2 nurses, a perfusionist named Marco who'd driven down from Virginia because he believed in what we were doing, and a pediatric anesthesiologist. I wrote every protocol myself, drew up the equipment lists, spent 3 weekends negotiating referral agreements with 6 community hospitals in surrounding counties because those hospitals were sending babies to Duke or UNC. 5-hour round trips for families who couldn't afford a hotel room near the medical center. Our first surgery was April 9, 2014. A 7-month-old named Kaylin with a ventricular septal defect. I remember her mother's face in the pre-op room. This 24-year-old woman from Fuquay-Varina who kept asking, "But she's so small. How do you operate on something that small?" Kaylin's surgery took 3 hours and 40 minutes. She's 11 now, plays travel soccer in the Wake County League. By 2016, we were averaging 14 surgeries a year. I'd set up a post-operative follow-up network that tracked every patient for 5 years. By 2019, we hit 22 surgeries. The program was saving lives that would have previously required that 5-hour transfer. Families in Johnston County, Harnett County, Lee County, they didn't have to choose between their job and their baby's heart surgery anymore. They could drive 30 minutes, not 3 hours. I started getting invited to conferences, presented a paper at the American College of Cardiology in 2018. Modified patch repair outcomes in a community hospital setting. Nobody in my family asked where I'd gone that weekend. When I got back, my mother's voicemail said, "Call me back, honey. Brecken needs help choosing a preschool." I never told my family any of this. Not because I was hiding it, they didn't ask. When I came home for Thanksgiving, the conversation was about Brecken's new house in the North Hills neighborhood. The one with the wraparound porch and the $6,200 monthly mortgage that Collier's family helped with. When I called on Sundays, my mom wanted to talk about Brecken's pregnancy, then Brecken's second pregnancy, then Brecken's kitchen renovation that cost more than my annual salary during residency. And Brecken, she knew I was some kind of doctor at Trident. That's how she put it once. My sister's some kind of doctor at Collier's hospital. Like I was an accessory to her husband's family legacy. Then came the fundraiser circuit. Collier's mother stepped down from the Gala committee in 2017, and Brecken took over. And that's when things got, I don't even know the right word. Brecken started claiming the congenital heart program as her personal achievement. Not subtly either. I mean full speeches at donor dinners. Full paragraphs in the Gala program. When I saw that our community lacked access to pediatric cardiac care, I knew I had to act. That kind of thing. The first time I heard about it was from Dina Crockett, one of my surgical nurses. She came into the break room holding her phone and said, "Dr. Vaughn, isn't this your sister?" She showed me Brecken's Instagram post. A photo of her standing in our cardiac wing, hand on the wall, captioned, "2 years ago, I walked into this hospital with nothing but a vision. Today, we've saved 30+ little hearts. This is why I fight." I stared at that post for a long time. You were never part of the medical conversation, Maud. You do your little surgeries and that's great, but the reason this program even has funding is because of what I built on the donor side. You should be thanking me, honestly. She said that to me at Easter dinner, 2019. In front of our parents. In front of Collier. In front of Brecken's 2 kids who were eating ham at the kids' table 6 feet away. And nobody said a word. I need to explain something about my sister because I think from the outside it's easy to paint her as some kind of cartoon villain, and she wasn't that. Brecken genuinely believed what she was saying. That's the part that messed with my head the most. She'd convinced herself that fundraising was the program, that the money she raised, which, to be fair, was real money, maybe $400,000 over 3 years, was the thing keeping those kids alive. She couldn't separate the funding from the surgery. In her mind, she held the scalpel, and our family reinforced it every time. My dad started calling Brecken the heart of Raleigh. I'm not kidding, that was his actual phrase. My mom kept a scrapbook of Brecken's gala photos, framed one of them in the hallway next to my high school graduation picture. The gala photo was bigger. By 2020, I'd performed 31 surgeries, published 2 papers, developed a modified patch technique for complete atrioventricular canal defects that 3 other hospitals had adopted. The surgical community knew my name. The Vaughn modification, that's what they were calling it at conferences. I didn't name it that. A colleague at Johns Hopkins started using the term in a case study, and it stuck. My family had no idea. I went to a conference in Chicago that November. A surgeon from Texas came up to me and said, "You're Maud Vaughn? I used your technique last month on a 6-week-old. Perfect outcome. That modification saved us 30 minutes of bypass time." He shook my hand like I was someone important. I almost didn't know how to respond, because in the world I went home to every other weekend, I was the sister who couldn't even show up for a family legacy video. That's the thing about living in 2 worlds. In one, you're respected. In the other, you're tolerated. And the second one has a way of making you forget the first one exists. If you've ever poured years of your life into something quiet and essential, something that literally keeps people alive, and then watched someone else hold up a champagne glass and take the credit, I think you know what this specific kind of exhaustion feels like. It's not rage exactly. It's more like standing right there watching it happen and not being able to say a word. Tell me in the comments if you've been there. I want to hear your story because you'll understand what happened next better than anyone. But first, Brecken was about to do something that made the credit stealing look like a warm-up. The thing about Brecken's donor network was that it ran through the Trident Foundation, which was technically a separate entity from the hospital. Separate board, separate accounts, separate reporting. So when Brecken filed the foundation's annual impact report in January 2021, she listed herself as Program Director, Pediatric Cardiac Initiative, not Fundraising Chair, not Foundation Board Member, Program Director. That report went to the State Health Department, it went to 2 federal grant agencies, and it went to the North Carolina Medical Association. I found out because Dr. Luann Prescott, she was Trident's chief medical officer, called me into her office on a Tuesday morning and closed the door. She had the report open on her desk. She pointed at Brecken's title and said, "Maud, do you know about this?" I didn't. Dr. Prescott was quiet for a minute. Then she said, "This is a problem, because I just nominated you for the NCMA Physician of the Decade Award, and the committee is going to see this report. They're going to think someone else built your program." That was the first time I'd heard about the nomination. I sat there in Dr. Prescott's office and I didn't know what to feel. Pride? Sure. But mostly this sick, tight feeling in my stomach, because even in the moment where someone was finally recognizing what I'd done, even then, Brecken was in the way. Dr. Prescott didn't tell me what to do. She just showed me the facts and let me sit with them. I respect her for that. She said the NCMA committee would do their own verification. They'd pull surgical records, publication history, hospital credentials. The truth would be on paper regardless of what Brecken's foundation report said. But she also said something else. She said, "The award ceremony is in October, and they want to present it at a major community event. They've been in contact with the Trident Foundation about hosting it at the annual gala." Brecken's Gala. I laughed. I actually laughed out loud, which I don't think Dr. Prescott expected. She looked at me like I'd lost it for a second, and maybe I had. Here's what Dr. Prescott didn't know, and what I only found out later from a hospital administrator named Claudette Moreau. Claudette had been working at Trident for 9 years.
handled grant compliance and foundation reporting. Quiet woman, mid-50s, always had reading glasses perched on top of her head even when she was already wearing contacts. She'd been tracking the discrepancies between Brecken's foundation reports and the actual hospital records for over a year. Not because she had anything against Brecken, because the grant reporting had to be accurate for federal compliance, and it wasn't. She had a folder, beige, nothing dramatic, full of side-by-side comparisons. Brecken's version versus reality, dates that didn't match, programs attributed to foundation initiative that were actually started by surgical staff, my name appearing nowhere in documents that described procedures I personally performed. There was even a section where Brecken had listed program development milestones and taken credit for recruiting Marco, our perfusionist, the same Marco she'd never met.
Nan Eastwick had co-signed 2 of those foundation reports. She'd publicly introduced Brecken at a donor breakfast as the woman who built our pediatric cardiac program. That part I didn't find out until later. At the time, I just assumed Nan was another member of the audience Brecken had won over. Claudette found me in the cafeteria one Wednesday. She'd seen the NCMA nomination paperwork come through in an internal routing memo that week, and it had apparently been the thing that pushed her to act. She sat down with her tray, grilled chicken, green beans, a Diet Coke, and made small talk about the cafeteria's new salad bar for a full 2 minutes before she got to the point. Then she said, "Dr. Vaughn, I think you should know what's in the Foundation's records, because if the NCMA pulls them, and they will, there's going to be a conflict." "How long have you known about this?" I asked. 14 months. "Why didn't you say something sooner?" She put down her fork. "Because your sister's husband is on my board of directors, and I have 2 kids in college." I understood that. I didn't like it, but I understood it. So here's where things stood. I had the nomination. The NCMA was doing verification. The ceremony was scheduled for the gala, and Brecken had no idea any of it was happening. She was planning the gala like she did every year. Centerpieces, silent auction, keynote speaker. She'd already booked a videographer to film her opening remarks, and I just let it play out. I didn't call Brecken. I didn't warn her. I didn't tell my parents. I let the NCMA do their work, and I let the calendar move forward. Was that cruel? Maybe. I've thought about it a lot, but I'd spent 11 years building something real while my sister stapled her name to it, and I was tired of being the one who made peace. I was tired of being the one who protected everyone else's feelings at the cost of my own truth. So I bought a dress, navy blue, long sleeves, and I waited. Now, I know some of you are thinking you know how this ends. The big gala scene, the dramatic reveal. And yes, that happened. But what you don't know yet is what Brecken did in the 3 weeks before the gala that almost derailed everything. And that part? That part still makes my hands shake when I think about it. I need to pause here for a second, because I keep going back and forth on this. Was I right to let it play out? To stand there in that navy dress and let the gala happen without saying a word to my own sister? Would you have warned her? Called her up and said, "I know what you've been doing, and the truth is coming whether you're ready or not." Or would you have let it play out? I'd love to know what you would have done. Drop it in the comments. Because in the 3 weeks before that gala, Brecken did something that almost made me pull the plug on the whole thing. 3 weeks before the gala, Brecken called me, which was unusual. Brecken didn't call me unless she needed something. She said she was putting together a legacy video for the gala, a 10-minute documentary about the cardiac program, narrated by her, with footage of the surgical wing and interviews with families. She wanted me to appear in it, as one of the surgical team members, not as the surgeon who built the program, not as the department head, as one of the team members. I said I'd think about it. Then she said, and this is the part that still gets me, "Maud, I really think it would mean a lot to the donors to see an actual doctor. You know, it adds credibility to what we've accomplished." What we've accomplished. I said no, politely. Told her I had a conflict with the filming schedule. There was a pause. Then she said, "This is why nobody knows your name, Maud.
You'd rather hide in an operating room than actually matter to anyone. She said it calm, like she was stating a fact, like she'd thought it 100 times and was finally just saying it out loud. Then she hung up. 2 days later, my cousin Janelle texted me a screenshot. Brecken had posted in the family group chat, the one I'd muted 3 years ago, about the legacy video. She'd written, "Everyone's contributing except Maud, but what else is new? She's always been more comfortable hiding than helping." 14 family members saw that. Nobody pushed back. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came 8 days later. I was in my office reviewing post-op scans for a 4-year-old named Declan, a kid with hypoplastic left heart syndrome, one of the most complex cases we'd ever taken, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mother. She'd forwarded me a link to an article in the Triangle Business Journal. The headline, "Brecken Eastwick, the woman behind Raleigh's pediatric heart revolution."
I clicked it. It was a full profile, 2,000 words. Brecken talked about her vision, her relentless advocacy, her personal mission after watching a documentary about children with heart defects. She described the program's growth from 0 to 43 successful surgeries. She'd used my exact number and attributed it to the team I assembled and the infrastructure my foundation provided. My name appeared once, in the 11th paragraph, as Dr. Maud Vaughn, a surgeon affiliated with the program. Affiliated. I closed my office door. I sat down on the floor, literally on the floor, between my desk and the window. And I just sat there for a while, not crying, not angry exactly, just empty. That's the only word for it. 11 years of 6 a.m. surgeries, of holding parents' hands in waiting rooms at midnight, of watching children wake up alive because of what my hands did. And I was affiliated. I called Dina that night. She answered on the first ring, which tells you something about Dina. I read her the article. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You know what I think, Dr. Vaughn? I think your sister spelled affiliated wrong. It should have said irreplaceable." I laughed. It came out weird, kind of broken, but I laughed. That article ran 2 weeks before the gala. Brecken shared it on every platform she had. Our parents shared it. Collier's family shared it. 3 of my aunts sent it to their church groups. The hospital's PR team contacted me quietly to ask if I wanted to issue a correction. I told them to wait. Nan Eastwick even reposted the article on the foundation's official page with a comment about, "Proud to support this incredible woman's vision," because the NCMA award was now confirmed. I had the letter in my kitchen drawer under a stack of electric bills. The ceremony was locked in. And for the first time in 11 years, I wasn't going to step aside. I should tell you what those 2 weeks felt like, because they weren't dramatic, they were just long. I went to work. I did my surgeries. I checked on Declan every morning. He was recovering beautifully, gaining half a pound a week, pink in his cheeks, his eyes brighter, his grip on my finger getting tighter. I ate dinner alone most nights. I walked my neighborhood in the dark, past the houses with their porch lights on, and I thought about what was coming. I didn't feel powerful. I felt scared. There's this thing people don't tell you about standing up for yourself. The anticipation is worse than the act. My stomach hurt for 2 weeks straight. I bought antacids in bulk from the CVS on Six Forks Road. The dress stayed on the back of my closet door. Navy blue, long sleeves. Every morning I'd see it when I was getting ready for work. The gala date was circled on my kitchen calendar, October 14th, and my stomach wouldn't settle. The gala was October 14th, 2023. The Raleigh Convention Center, main ballroom. 320 seats. 260 of them filled. I got there early, parked on the lower level, took the back elevator. I'd told Dr. Prescott and Claudette I'd be there, but nobody else. I wore the navy dress.
Flat shoes, because I'd been on my feet for a 12-hour surgery rotation the day before, and I wasn't about to suffer in heels for my own vindication. Brecken was already there, obviously. She was in a white gown with her hair up, directing the caterers, adjusting the microphone height, repositioning the flower arrangements. She looked beautiful, I'll give her that. Brecken always looked like she belonged in rooms like this. She didn't see me come in. I sat at a table near the back, between Claudette and Dr. Prescott's husband, Terrence. The program was sitting at every place setting. I picked it up. Brecken's photo was on the cover. The words underneath read, "A Decade of Heart, How One Woman Changed Pediatric Care in Central North Carolina." I set it down. Claudette looked at me and didn't say anything, which was exactly the right thing to do. The evening started with cocktails, then the silent auction, then dinner. Brecken gave her opening remarks at 7:45. She was good, I'll admit that. She talked about the first time she toured the cardiac wing. She talked about believing in something bigger than yourself. She talked about the families. She even cried. A little, controlled, camera-ready cry. The audience applauded. Then the NCMA representative took the stage. His name was Dr. Wendell Ostrowski, and he was tall, gray-haired, and had the kind of voice that made a room go quiet just by clearing his throat. He thanked Brecken for hosting. He talked about the importance of community health infrastructure. And then he said,
Every decade, the North Carolina Medical Association identifies one physician whose clinical contribution has fundamentally changed patient outcomes in our state. This year, we are honoring a surgeon whose work you may not know by name, but whose hands have given 43 children a second chance at life. I watched Brecken's face from across the room. She was smiling. She was nodding. She thought this was part of her program. Another segment she'd approved. The Vaughan modification, a pioneering surgical technique for complete atrioventricular canal repair, has been adopted by 7 hospitals across 3 states. The Pediatric Congenital Heart Program at Trident Children's Hospital, built from the ground up by one surgeon, is now a regional model. Ladies and gentlemen, the NCMA Physician of the Decade, Dr. Maud Elaine Vaughan. The room was quiet for about 3 seconds. Then the applause started, but not from Brecken's table, from the medical staff, from Dina, my surgical nurse, who was standing in the back in street clothes because she'd driven 40 minutes just to be there, from Dr. Prescott, from Terrence, from a table of cardiac families I hadn't even noticed, parents who'd heard about the event and bought tickets. I stood up. My hands were steady. I walked to the stage, and I counted 12 tables between me and that podium. Somewhere around the 5th one, my hip caught the corner of a chair and I had to steady myself. Nobody noticed, or if they did, they were kind enough not to react. A waiter near the service entrance had frozen mid-pour, wine bottle suspended over a glass. I could hear my flat shoes on the hardwood floor. I could feel Brecken's eyes on the side of my face as I passed her table. When I got to the podium, the microphone was too high, set for Dr. Ostrowski, and I had to pull it down, which took a second longer than I wanted. I looked at the room and I said, "Thank you. This award belongs to every child who trusted me with their heart, and to every family who drove to Raleigh because they believed their baby deserved a chance." That's all I said. 17 words. I didn't mention Brecken. I didn't need to, because Brecken's face told the entire story. She was frozen. Her champagne glass was suspended halfway to her lips. Collier had his hand on her arm. Not comforting, more like holding her in place. And their mother, Nan Eastwick, was staring at Brecken with an expression I recognized. It was the expression of someone realizing they've been lied to. Quick, if this story's hitting different for you, just hit subscribe. I need you here for what Brecken did next, because the gala was just the beginning. The gala aftermath was weird. That's the most honest word for it. People came up to me afterward with these faces, like they wanted to congratulate me, but also weren't sure what had just happened. A few donors shook my hand and said, "We had no idea." One woman, I think she was on the foundation board, pulled me aside and said, "How long has this been going on?" I didn't answer that. I just smiled and said, "Thank you." Brecken left early. She didn't say goodbye to me. She didn't say anything to anyone, from what I heard. Collier drove her home. I found out later that she sat in their car for 20 minutes in the convention center parking garage before he could get her to go inside. I went home that night and heated up leftover soup and sat at my kitchen table and felt, I don't know, relieved? Sure, but also this strange hollowness because I'd spent so long imagining what it would feel like to be seen, and now that it had happened, I just felt tired. Bone tired. The kind of tired that a full night's sleep doesn't fix. I looked at my phone. 17 missed calls. 8 texts. I turned it off and put it in the kitchen drawer next to the NCMA letter and ate my soup in silence. The next 72 hours were chaos. Brecken launched what I can only describe as a counter-campaign. She called our parents first, told them the NCMA had ambushed her at her own event, that I had orchestrated the whole thing to humiliate her. She called our Aunt Rita in Greensboro. She called Collier's college roommate who was on the hospital's advisory council. She texted our cousin Janelle a 9-paragraph message about how I'd always been jealous of her social skills, and this was 11 years of resentment coming out. My mother called me at 6 a.m. the morning after the gala and said, "Maud, how could you do that to your sister? She works so hard." I said, "Mom, I'm the surgeon." Long pause. "Well, you both contribute in different ways." That was something. I stood in my kitchen holding the phone, and I remember looking at the coffee maker and thinking, she just told me that performing open-heart surgery on children and printing Gala programs are equivalent contributions. And she believes it. She actually believes it. But Brecken didn't stop at our parents. She emailed the Trident Foundation board and requested an emergency meeting. She posted on Instagram something about how recognition should go to the entire team, not just one person, with a photo of herself in the cardiac wing. She called 3 donors and told them the award was politically motivated. And she convinced her mother-in-law, Nan, to write a letter to the NCMA questioning the selection process. She also did something I didn't find out about until weeks later. She called the Triangle Business Journal reporter who'd written her profile and tried to get him to publish a follow-up piece questioning the NCMA's nomination process. The reporter declined. He told Claudette, they apparently knew each other from a charity board, that he'd looked into it and the surgical record speaks for itself. All of this in 3 days. Claudette called me on day 4. She said, "Maud, I need to show you something." She'd been CC'd on an internal email from Brecken to the foundation board. In the email, Brecken had written, and I'm going to say this exactly as it was, "Dr. Vaughn is a competent technician, but the program's success is a direct result of foundation-led community engagement. Any suggestion otherwise undermines years of philanthropic investment. Competent technician." I'd held a 3-pound infant's heart in my hand and stitched it together while Brecken was picking napkin colors. Competent technician. Sorry, it's either laugh or throw something. And I like my phone. Here's the thing nobody tells you about speaking your truth. The truth doesn't just set you free. It sets everything on fire. And then you have to stand there while it burns. The foundation board meeting happened on a Thursday. I wasn't invited. Brecken chaired it. According to Claudette, who attended as administrative staff, Brecken spent 45 minutes presenting herself as the victim of institutional politics and arguing that the NCMA award should have been a shared recognition. But then something happened that Brecken didn't plan for. Nan Eastwick, Brecken's own mother-in-law, picked up the 2021 Foundation report from the stack of documents in front of her and said, "Brecken, there's something in here I'd like to understand. This report lists 12 program development milestones. Can you walk me through the third one? The recruitment of the perfusion specialist?" Brecken blinked. She said something about coordinating with the medical team and facilitating staffing decisions. Nan let her finish. Then she said, "Because according to the hospital's HR records, the perfusionist was recruited directly by Dr. Vaughn. He drove from Virginia. Your foundation wasn't involved in his hiring." Somebody at the far end of the table shifted in their chair. Claudette said she could hear the leather creak. "I facilitated the surgical protocols," Nan continued. "You're listed as overseeing protocol development. Can you explain what that entailed from a clinical perspective?" Brecken went quiet. Claudette told me that the silence lasted maybe 10 full seconds, and nobody spoke. Not one person. Then Nan said, "I've sat on hospital boards for 27 years. I know the difference between a fundraiser and a clinician, and I think this board needs to have a very honest conversation about accurate representation. If you've ever watched someone lose their most powerful shield in real time, the person they assumed would always protect them, you know how it shifts everything. The room changes. The air changes. Tell me something, and drop it in the comments. If you were in my position, would you have reached out to Brecken after that? Would you have called her, tried to make peace? Or would you have let her sit with what she'd built? Because I chose the second one, and I'm still not sure if that makes me strong or just stubborn." Claudette told me Brecken's hands were shaking after that. She picked up her water glass, set it down without drinking, picked it up again. The woman who'd stood on stages and delivered 20-minute speeches without breaking a sweat couldn't hold a glass of water steady. After the room cleared out, Brecken didn't leave. She just sat there. Claudette was packing up her notes, and Brecken said, quietly, not to anyone in particular, "I just wanted them to be proud of me too." Not strategic, not spin, just cracked and small and sitting in an empty boardroom. I didn't know what to do with that when Claudette told me. I still don't, because it doesn't undo anything, but it's there, and I can't pretend it isn't. You know what I keep coming back to? The person who does the work and the person who takes the credit. They both end up exhausted, but only one of them built something real. But what happened next wasn't about me and Brecken anymore, because our mother got involved. And that's when it got really bad. My mom drove to Raleigh on a Saturday morning without telling me she was coming. I opened my front door, and there she was, standing on my porch in her church coat, holding a Tupperware container of banana bread in front of her with both hands. She sat on my couch and told me, in that careful voice she uses when she's trying not to take sides while absolutely taking a side, that I needed to fix this. That Brecken was devastated, that the family was falling apart. I said, "Mom, do you understand what I do for a living?" She said, "Of course I do. You're a doctor." "I'm not just a doctor. I'm the surgeon who built the cardiac program that Brecken's been taking credit for since 2017. I've performed 43 open-heart surgeries on children. I developed a technique that other hospitals use. The NCMA gave me an award for it. Did you know any of that?" She looked at the banana bread. "Brecken says the program is a team effort." It is, and I'm the one who built the team. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she said, "Your father and I have always been proud of both of you." And I knew right then that she wasn't going to choose. Not because she was neutral, but because choosing me meant admitting she'd been wrong about Brecken for a very long time. And that was a mirror she couldn't look into. I didn't argue. I just said, "You can leave the banana bread." She hugged me at the door. It was a weird hug, like she was holding on to something she couldn't name. The next 2 weeks were the hardest. Not because of Brecken. She'd gone silent, which was almost worse than the campaigning, but because of the doubt. I'd lay in bed at night and think, did I do this the right way? Should I have warned her? Should I have been quieter, smaller, more Maud about it? My apartment felt too quiet. I'd come home after a 10-hour shift and the silence would just sit on me. I started staying later at the hospital, reviewing charts I'd already reviewed, reorganizing supply closets that didn't need reorganizing. Dina caught me restocking suture kits at 9:30 one night and said, "Go home, Dr. Vaughn. The sutures will survive without you." I went home. I didn't sleep. The worst night was a Wednesday. I remember because I'd had a surgery that morning, a routine VSD closure, and it went perfectly. But I came home and I sat on my bathroom floor and I cried. Not about Brecken, not about the Gala, about all the years in between. About every Sunday phone call where I'd wanted to say, "I saved a child's life today," and instead said, "That sounds great, Mom. Tell Brecken I said hi." About every holiday dinner where I'd swallowed my own news so there'd be more room for hers. 11 years of making myself small, and now that I'd finally taken up space, I felt guilty about it. Which is, yeah, that's its own kind of messed up. But then I'd think about Kaylin, my first patient. About Declan, who was 2 weeks post-op and gaining weight beautifully. About the 17 families who sent cards to the surgical team last Christmas. And I'd think, no, the work is real. The recognition was earned. And the truth isn't cruel just because it's uncomfortable for the person who was lying. The silence you keep to protect someone else's comfort has a cost, and I'd been paying it for 11 years. Collier Eastwick called me on a Tuesday afternoon. That surprised me. The foundation board was still mid-review. I didn't know the outcome yet. He said, "Maud, I owe you an apology. I should have said something years ago. I knew what Brecken was doing, and I let it happen because it was easier." I asked him why he was telling me now. He said, "Because my son is 4, and I don't want him growing up thinking that taking credit for someone else's work is the same as doing the work." I didn't expect to feel anything when Collier said that, but I did, because it was the first time anyone in that family had just said it plainly. No qualifications, no both sides language, just, "She was wrong, and I'm sorry." I said, "Thank you, Collier," and I meant it. The foundation board completed their review 3 weeks later, in November. Claudette sent me the summary, 11 pages single-spaced. All of Brecken's reports going back to 2018 were flagged for inaccurate role descriptions and misattributed program outcomes. 14 specific instances where clinical achievements were attributed to foundation-led initiatives. 3 federal grant applications where Brecken's title was listed as something she wasn't. The board didn't fire Brecken. She'd resigned before they could, which was very Brecken. But they issued a formal correction to every agency that had received the flawed reports. My name was added to every document it should have been on from the beginning. The NCMA published a profile of me in their winter journal. Full page. Photo of me in surgical scrubs standing in the cardiac wing I built. The headline was, "Dr. Maud Vaughn, 11 years of quiet excellence." I framed it, put it in my office between a drawing from Kaylin and a thank you letter from Declan's parents. Things changed at the hospital after that. Not in a dramatic way. Small things mostly. Nurses who'd always called me Maud started calling me Dr. Vaughn in front of visitors, which felt weird but also right. The hospital updated its website.
The cardiac program page now had my photo and my CV and the words, "Founded and directed by Dr. Maud Vaughn" in the header. Small things. But when you've been invisible for 11 years, small things feel enormous. Brecken and Collier separated 3 months later. I don't think it was only about this. Marriages are complicated, and I'd heard through Janelle that there were other issues, money arguments, disagreements about the kids' schooling. But I know the Gala cracked something in their relationship that couldn't be patched with donor dinners and matching outfits. I heard from Janelle that Brecken moved to a townhouse in Cary. She's working as an event planner for a nonprofit that does literacy programs, which, honestly, is a job she's actually good at. She's not fundraising for medical programs anymore. I think that's probably healthier for everyone. We haven't spoken since the Gala. That's been almost a year now. I don't hate her. I need to be clear about that. I don't wish her harm. But I also don't miss the version of our relationship where I was invisible and she was the sun. Some relationships only work when one person agrees to be smaller. I stopped agreeing. My Aunt Rita in Greensboro still hasn't spoken to me. Janelle says she thinks I went too far. I don't call her anymore. That's something I didn't expect. You brace yourself for the big fallout, and it's the quiet absences that catch you off guard. I turned 43 last month. Dina and 2 of the other nurses threw me a surprise lunch in the break room. They'd ordered a cake from this bakery on Glenwood Avenue that does the really good buttercream, and someone had written 43 hearts, 43 candles on it. I cried. Like, ugly cried. Right there in the break room, in my scrubs with frosting on my fingers. It was the best birthday I've had in maybe 20 years. The program hit a milestone last quarter, our 50th surgery. A 9-month-old girl named Harper with tetralogy of Fallot. Her parents drove from Sanford, about 45 minutes south. After the surgery, her father stood in the hallway and said, "You gave us our daughter back." He was a big guy, construction worker, huge hands, rough from work, and he just broke down in the hallway of the cardiac wing. And I stood there with him, and I didn't say anything wise or profound. I just stood there. Sometimes that's the only honest response. I've been dating someone. I'm not going to say a lot about that because it's new, and I'm careful with new things. But his name is Wesley, and he teaches 7th grade history at Ligon Middle School. And on our 3rd date, he asked me to explain how a heart-lung bypass machine works, and then listened for 45 minutes without looking at his phone once. That might not sound like a big deal, but when you've spent years around people who can't give you their attention for more than the length of an Instagram caption, someone who listens, really listens, feels like oxygen. I see my parents about once a month now. Sunday dinners. It's different than it was. My dad asks about work. Specifically, he asks about cases, about surgeries, about publications. Last month, he said, "How's that little boy from Johnston County doing? The one with what was it? The thing with the aorta?" He gets the terminology wrong every time. I don't correct him. The fact that he's asking is enough. I think the NCMA article shook something loose in him. He keeps a copy in his truck's glove compartment, which is the most Gerald Vaughn thing I've ever heard. Shows it to people at the hardware store. That's my daughter. She operates on children's hearts. My mom is trying. She brought me a clipping from the Kernersville newspaper that mentioned the Vaughn modification. She'd circled my name in yellow highlighter. She didn't say anything about it, just left it on my kitchen counter when she visited. That's how the Vaughn women communicate, apparently. Silently, through highlighted newspaper clippings and Tupperware containers left on counters.
She hasn't apologized. I don't think she ever will, not in words. But the highlighter was yellow, and that was her best color. And I think that was her way of saying, she sees me now. Dr. Prescott retired in January. At her farewell reception, they had it in the hospital atrium, cheese platters, a sheet cake from Costco, the whole 9 yards. She pulled me aside and said, "Maud, you know I nominated you for that award, but I want you to know the committee would have found you eventually. Your work was never invisible. It was just waiting for the right set of eyes." I stood there holding a paper plate with a square of sheet cake, and I thought about that my work was never invisible. And then I walked back to the cardiac wing, because I had a 7 a.m. pre-op consult the next morning, and the chart wasn't going to review itself. Last Thursday, I was in OR 3 at 6 in the morning. A 5-year-old named Bennett with a complex aortic coarctation repair. The surgery took 4.5 hours. Everything went textbook. When I came out and told his mother that Bennett was stable and strong, she grabbed both my hands and held them against her face and just said, "Thank you, thank you, thank you," over and over. I went back to my office after, sat in my chair, looked at the wall, the framed NCMA article, Kaylin's crayon drawing of a heart with wings, the photo of my surgical team on our 5th anniversary, and Brecken's Instagram post from 2019, the one Dina showed me in the break room. I'd printed it and pinned it to my corkboard, not out of anger, as a reminder that the people who matter will always find you, and the people who take credit will eventually run out of things to claim. Look, if you've stayed with me this whole time, I want to say something, and I mean this. Thank you. That's not a small thing. Giving someone 45 minutes of your attention while they tell you about the hardest, most complicated thing in their life. I don't take that lightly. This story was hard to tell. Not the Gala part. That part's almost satisfying to relive. But the years before it, the years of being erased, the years of hearing my sister describe my life's work as her personal mission, and just swallowing it, that was hard to say out loud. If this story reached something in you, if you know what it's like to do the quiet work while someone else takes the bow, I'd be grateful if you'd hit that subscribe button. Not for me, for the next person who needs to hear that their silence doesn't make them invisible, that the work matters even when nobody's clapping. I'd love to hear from you. What's the thing you built that nobody gave you credit for? What's the work that someone else signed their name to? Drop it in the comments, because I want to read every single one. And if you know someone who needs this story tonight, share it, pass it along. Let them know they're not alone in this. There are more stories here, more women, more families, more truths that needed telling. Check them out when you're ready. My name is Maud Aileen Vaughn. I'm a pediatric cardiac surgeon in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I was never just affiliated. I was in the room. I was in the operating room. I was the one holding the scalpel. Saturday morning. My kitchen. Coffee in the blue mug. The one with the chipped handle that I keep meaning to replace but probably never will. Sun coming through the window over the sink. Same spot it always hits at 7:15. The newspaper is open to the crossword, which I'm terrible at but do anyway. My phone buzzes. It's Dina. She's texted a photo of a card from Harper's parents, a crayon drawing of a big red heart, signed in wobbly 5-year-old letters. "Thank you, Dr. Vaughn." I set the phone down on the counter, next to the highlighted newspaper clipping. Maud Aileen Vaughn, 43 years old, still here.